Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Aviation This Week. I am Bisi Adebayo. A lot has been happening in the industry with more countries resuming international flights in the post-COVID-19 lockdown. Besides the significant return of air travel activities, airlines are applying innovative measures to make their services more appealing to the public. These and more on our background report.
Hundreds of New Zealand plane passengers have started arriving in Sydney as part of new trans-Tasman travel bubble amid a rapidly falling growth rate in cases at the epicentre of Australia's coronavirus outbreak. Friday, 16th of October marked the first day of no quarantine flights between New Zealand and Australia, part of a travel bubble between both countries. There were emotional scenes at Sydney Airport as friends and families reunited for the first time in months. Tarem Kowalski was finally reunited with her partner, Jaden Guest.
Really difficult, just totally unsure about what's going to happen. Yeah, it's been quite hard.
In a tentative reopening to international tourism, travellers on the approved flight will not be required to quarantine in Sydney and can travel in limited parts of the country without staying put for 2 weeks. The start of no quarantine flights also meant the first day on the job in half a year for some airline staff.
Jetstar hasn't operated any international services since April of this year due to border restrictions. So yeah, today we're really excited about the relaunch of the Tasman.
It has been 6 months and it's quite eerie coming into the airport here, and we do actually have a couple of cabin crew on today's flight have been able to work now because of this flight.
The arrangements, however, are not yet reciprocal, with New Zealand requiring arrivals to be quarantined for 2 weeks.
And really excited about, quarantine kind of not happening. Goes to show how, how the Australians are actually, everybody's working hard to try to get everything kind of back to the way it was before. I mean, what's normal these days?
Case numbers are falling in Australia, but New Zealand is requiring travellers from there to quarantine for 2 weeks at a cost of over $2,000 per head.
Travelled 2,000 k's by car, so from central Queensland. Kind of the only opportunity we'll get for a while, I think, so make the most of it, and I'll have to fly back and isolate, but it's all worth it, I reckon.
Air New Zealand said around 90% of those travelling were only booked to travel one way. Passengers will be able to go to New South Wales, the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory without having to undergo quarantine upon arrival. In a similar development, Hong Kong and Singapore have agreed to set up a travel bubble, a move to re-establish overseas travel links and lift the hurdle of quarantine for visiting foreigners. During a news conference, Hong Kong's Commerce Secretary Edward Yau says the travellers under the scheme will need to get negative COVID-19 test results and travel on dedicated flights.
Singapore and Hong Kong are among the first partners that are able to lock in this mutually agreeable arrangement, whereby fulfilling certain conditions, essentially sort of a mutually recognized COVID-19 test, bubble flight, ensuring no transit passenger coming in, and also sort of imposing these conditions to allow travelers to come or go under this arrangement.
Singapore has already announced pacts on essential business and official travel from China, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, South Korea, and opened unilaterally to general visitors from Brunei, New Zealand, Vietnam, and most of Australia.
This is the Terminal 1 check-in area for Changi.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong's travellers boarded a flight to nowhere to enjoy a bird's-eye view of the city and the sunset before flying straight back home as the latest trend to give people a glimpse of normality during the COVID-19 pandemic. An Airbus A320 with 100 Hong Kong passengers on board flew within 200 nautical miles in the southeast direction from Hong Kong. The top view from windows sightseeing over the South China Sea and some of Hong Kong's iconic city views.
都好懷念可以飛嘅時刻咯，因為都差唔多成大半年冇飛過咧，而家可以飛翻，其實都真係個藝飛人體驗，但係我覺得有好過冇咯，其實都幾期待，so far 都幾 enjoy 嘅。
Passengers were excited about the 90-minute golden hour flight. The flight, themed Embrace Hong Kong, sold out in 30 minutes, with tickets costing between $110 and $153.
We wanted to give people the opportunity to see what flying is like now that we're in the pandemic, and to see that it is a safe mode of travel, and really to capture that pent-up demand that there is to get back up in the sky. And many can't travel beyond Hong Kong, so this is a great alternative.
Hong Kong Airlines' golden hour flight offer follows in the footsteps of its competitor, budget carrier Hong Kong Express, which promptly sold out on tickets for its free Flycation Experience flights shortly after booking began online. With the aviation industry in deep crisis, several carriers, including in Taiwan, Australia and Japan, have been offering short flights that start and end at the same airport to raise cash.
Obviously, the pandemic is causing significant impact to many industries, and especially the airline industry, and it's extremely sad to see that many airlines are having to make cuts and lose staff. And at Hong Kong Airlines, we are as challenged as anybody, but we are taking measures to really ensure that we are ready.
However, green groups and climate activists have expressed concern over the sustainability of these low-utility flights, pointing to the grave environmental impacts of air travel.
We do believe that these airlines having this project is creating unnecessary additional greenhouse gas and carbon dioxide, because like before, back then, flight meant to go somewhere. They had a purpose to bring people and cargoes from a place to another place. But this flight, they go from Hong Kong to Hong Kong, going nowhere. The original purpose of flying is lost. They're flying just for the sake of flying. So I think this is unnecessary, it's meaningless.
Singapore Airlines called off a similar idea after outcry over the possible environmental impact.
In Britain, British Airways' new bus has appealed to Britain and the United States to back pre-flight COVID-19 testing with quarantine-free transatlantic travel corridors. Doyle was addressing the airline's 2050 online conference less than a week after Parents Group named him to lead the British carrier, replacing Alex Cross.
In the first instance, we need to work together on a testing pilot so flights can start between London and New York, traditionally one of the busiest airline routes in the world. To do this, first we need an agreement between the US and UK governments to reopen without blanket quarantine measures. At the moment, we are not getting any support or action, and we're not hearing from governments what they're thinking.
The former Aer Lingus CEO also echoed industry calls for a global framework of virus testing to replace quarantines blamed by the industry for exacerbating its slump.
Pre-flight testing lets our customers know the risk of travelling in close proximity to someone who is infected is low, and governments can be confident they are not importing the disease. The decision on which is the most appropriate test is for the authorities to decide, although the antigen test is developing quickly. It is fast, reliable and affordable.
He says a British-US pilot program requires both governments to waive quarantines.
Our position at British Airways is that we do not believe quarantine is the solution. We believe the best way to reassure people is to introduce a reliable and affordable test before flying.
Lift off, the final lift off of Atlantis.
Elsewhere in Kazakhstan, Central Asia, a Russian Soyuz spacecraft carrying a U.S. astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts blasted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in what is the last scheduled Russian flight carrying a U.S. crew member for the International Space Station.
On SpaceX instead.
It is the last Russian flight scheduled to carry an American astronaut because they will be flying on SpaceX instead.
When I was up there in 2016.
NASA microbiologist Kate Robbins is on board with 2 Russian cosmonauts. In 2016, she became the first person to sequence DNA in space. Robbins spoke about the special anniversary while she's on space station.
20 years anniversary of continuous human presence in space is going to be quite an event, and I think all 3 of us look forward to being there during that time.
NASA's space shuttle program ended in 2011. Since then, it has relied on Russia to ferry its astronauts to the space station. But in 2014, the U.S. Space Agency contracted SpaceX and Boeing to build competing space capsules to reclaim NASA's launch independence.
20 seconds. The thrusters of
The $8 billion program enabled SpaceX's first manned trip to the space station in May, marking the first from home soil in nearly a decade.
Soyuz is currently delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine.
NASA and Russia's space agency Roscosmos have admitted to continue the flight-sharing partnership. They're in talks about flying Russia's astronauts on U.S. vehicles and flying U.S. astronauts on Russian rockets when needed. But for now, this is the last time Russia will take an American astronaut into space.
The Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, is in the spotlight once again on our interview segment. In this exclusive conversation, he explains the position of the aviation industry in the federal government's economic sustainability plan to cushion the effects of COVID-19.
So government developed an economic sustainability plan for the entire economy of Nigeria, of which aviation is a subset. And in the thinking of government, that the government should offer some help for all businesses, inclusive of aviation, to survive. And in that plan, well thought out plan for that matter, aviation has also been factored in. And it would be, at the time, it was 2 kinds of help that will come from government. One of which was through the central bank. They will be giving out loan about 5%. To the airlines to be able to retool, to pay salaries, to do X, Y, Z. I personally, as a person, have a bit of concern. When you ask me as an entrepreneur, I take a loan from you and pay my salary. The meaning of that is that I'm paying salary plus 5%. So the wages have increased by 5%, if you like. But because we're in a very unusual circumstance and unusual times, whatever help can come, or that will come, we should accept, so to speak. But as to regards retooling and, generally, including buying planes, buying engines, and going for maintenance and services, I think it's a very good one from government, because 5%, and perhaps you have a moratorium period of 2 years or 3 years, and then you pay over a period of 7 years or so, or up to 10 years. I think this is something noble, and this is something that will help the industry to come back. So this is one part. The other part is that government intended to give some palliatives, some grants, some donations. It's not going to be as robust as that one that is coming from central bank. And that should go to the airlines and all other aviation businesses, including our own parastatals, for example. NCA, NAMA, FAN, everything. Because we only make money when you fly, and you don't fly, so we don't make money. No IGR being made. As a matter of fact, we are spending more money to maintain our airports and maintain our operations. So we're draining out. We got completely drained out to zero and going into negatives. So we thought that when government give out that palliatives, we would benefit. And this is it's not, the airlines are the key players. So naturally they will take a chunk of it. But there are lots of other operators or lots of other businesses around, ground handling, catering, travel agency, car hire, taxi, etc., hotels, food and drinks, and so on, and shop owners and what have you. So all those people would be taken into consideration, and no matter how small, they will go a long way to help them to do their business.
Welcome back. The dream of having a full flight simulator and a world-class aircraft maintenance center in Nigeria is becoming a reality, with Caverton Helicopters facilities at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos nearing completion. That's our special report.
The Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, was accompanied on the tour of Caverton facilities by the Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, the Managing Director of the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, as well as the Chairman of Caverton Helicopters, Dr. Aderemi Makanjuola, and top executives of the company. The Aircraft Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul Facility MRO was the first point of the tour. The project, which started in 2016, a spacious hangar built to accommodate jets and helicopters of all kinds, a paint booth, a bonded warehouse and service kits, among others, have been installed. The facility will provide comprehensive services covering a wide range of aircraft engine types as well as component maintenance services. The minister had this to say about the MRO.
I am more than impressed by what I've seen. A journey of 20 years looked like yesterday, but they've got everything that they will be needing for the type of operations that they do. And our primary purpose in government is to provide support, full support to entrepreneurs for them to provide the needed service and employ our people. And this is what exactly is happening here. We are very impressed and more than willing to continue to support, Caverton Helicopters and other entrepreneurs in civil aviation.
The tour continued with a visit to Caverton Flight Simulator, also located within the premises. In 2019, Caverton Helicopters Limited signed a factory acceptance agreement with French aerospace engineering company Thales Group for the installation of AW139 full flight simulator in Lagos. Thales Full Flight Simulator Level D is the most advanced commercial helicopter simulator in the world. Pilots who successfully complete the simulator training often get certified to fly the AW139. The simulator is designed to deliver various state-of-the-art training to pilots.
For Chief Makanjuola to venture into it is not only bridging a gap, he's creating a space. He's creating a space for Nigerians to participate in this.
The training facility is expected to eliminate the challenges faced by pilots in striving to obtain their recurrent training and boost local capacity development while curbing capital flight.
I think the facility, as you can see, is about 70% complete. We envisage that we should be ready by first quarter 2021. Caverton has an annual budget of just over $3 million spent flying pilots to various facilities in Dubai, in the US and Europe for training. The idea is that that money will now stay in Nigeria. We will not be spending monies on people going out of country, and hopefully we'll have people coming in to Nigeria to train their pilots around, when you look at not just in Nigeria, but also the West African and Sub-Saharan African region as well.
Like we said, the simulator is going to be EASA certified, meaning anyone in Europe can come and do their training here. There are not many helicopter training simulators around the world. There are only a very few. So for Nigeria and to have one the only one in Africa, it would definitely bring in a lot of capital inflows to the country.
In the long run, Caverton Helicopters Limited hopes to use the services that will be provided through these facilities to increase its productivity and improve performance, thereby adding value to the organization.
In keeping with its vision to provide seamless connectivity across cities, foremost Nigeria airline and West Africa's largest carrier, Air Peace, has announced that it will soon commence regular commercial flight operations from its Lagos hub into the city of Johannesburg, South Africa. The airline says it has made huge progress in meeting the stipulated requirements of the aviation authorities in both South Africa and Nigeria to enable it launch flight operations into the country before the year runs out. Air Peace, in a historic feat, had kicked off international flight operations with United Arab Emirates in July 2019 and has consistently shown vibrancy and reliability by operating several evacuation flights to and from China, United Kingdom, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Israel, India and Turkey during the COVID-19 lockdown. American Airlines Group has reported a third straight quarterly loss, hurt by a slump in travel globally due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The company said its third quarter cash burn rate was about $44 million per day, compared with about $58 million daily in the second quarter. The airline industry, hard hit by the virus outbreak, has so far failed to secure another $25 billion bailout to help protect jobs and cover payroll costs. The company posted a net loss of $2.40 billion in the third quarter ended September 30, compared with a profit of $425 million a year earlier. A strike from air traffic controllers over wage claims hamstrung Bolivia's airport and left hundreds of passengers stranded not long after the resumption of flights in the Andean country amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Airport unions are protesting the alleged non-payment of 3 months of wages. Authorities claim the payment is underway.
Well, I understand the right of people to strike for their rights. It's something very important for me, but we have rights as well, because you don't know if I have the money to stay here, I have the money to pay a hotel or my medication or my food. So I should have known that you people, you strike, I understand you, I respect your right, but you don't know, I should have known that you were going to be on strike.
Airport authorities reported more than 60 domestic and international flights scheduled for Wednesday were cancelled. Long lines of travelers were seen at Bolivia's main airport as passengers waited for their flight to be rescheduled. An Etihad flight landed at the Ben Gurion Airport in Israel in what the UAE carrier described as the first passenger flight to the country by Gulf Airline.
Etihad 9607 heavy established, runway 12.
Etihad 9607 Ben Gurion Tower, Shalom. On behalf of Ben Gurion Airport and Air Traffic Control, we are delighted to welcome.
A welcoming ceremony was held on the tarmac. Local media reported it carried senior airline officials, businessmen and journalists.
And hopefully this is the beginning of a good relationship between UAE and Israel. And if someone asked me a few months ago that I'll be here today making this speech here in Tel Aviv, I would say that's impossible. But because we have brave men who believe in peace, and we have His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the brave man, and you have Mr. Netanyahu, another brave man. So because of them, they work together and they make it peace. And I hope the whole region one day will be in peace, and people will live together in peace and harmony.
Etihad has previously operated cargo flight to Israel, carrying aid for the Palestinians. Israeli carrier El Al flew to Abu Dhabi in August with Israeli and US government delegations on board.
That's where we draw the curtain on the show today. Thank you for staying with us. See you same time next week. I am Bisi Adebayo.